I'm Mellum. I'm an advocate and activist for the LGBTIQA+, neurodivergent and disabled communities. I'm pansexual, I'm demi-romantic, I'm non-binary, I'm trans, I'm autistic, Tourettic, disabled, and both mentally and chronically ill. There's a general joke I have, which is that I have so many labels. My partner bought me a label maker for my birthday.
Why are you here today?
I decided to come here today because I think it's really important to talk about advocacy and activism with and for the LGBTIQA+ disabled community. A lot of the social justice movements have played a large role in highlighting barriers and oppressions, and collectively fighting for those has improved lives across the board. I think the thing is, society needs to understand that disabled and other disadvantaged people are not passive bystanders in need of a saviour. Self-advocacy, using support groups and assistive technology. You might be asking, why is Mel wearing sunglasses? We're inside. That's because I struggle with sensory input, and that's the way that I individually am actively improving my life as a disabled person. Being a part of our own narrative and having ownership over our bodies and lives is empowering. It's fundamental to human rights to allow people to have agency over themselves and over their lives. So I googled LGBTIQA+ and disability in Melbourne, but there were no peer groups. There was nothing. And I was sad, and then I was mad, and then I was motivated. So I created my own peer group, Spectrum Intersections, the LGBTIQA+ neurodivergent people. Yeah.
What is a campaign you are currently working on which advocates for LGBTQI+ people with disabilities?
I'm currently working on a campaign/project that looks to improve the lives of LGBTIQA+ autistic people in healthcare by finding out what current barriers they face, as well as creating resources that help them to advocate for themselves, which not only serves as a self-advocacy tool, but also as an educational piece for carers and healthcare workers. The direct action is a result from my own experiences of the many barriers that I face within the medical system. Ultimately, much of what I do is to help me self-advocate as a disabled queer person, whilst also helping my collective community as a follow-on. I think additionally that much of the work that I do individually also impacts the way that people are able to view themselves and what they can achieve.
Can you describe your typical client?
Much of my community face dual discrimination in multiple systems: employment, housing, education, justice and medical, not even looking into intergenerational poverty or trauma. The current landscape for LGBTIQA+ disabled people is one with so many barriers that it can be hard for us to even talk about them for fear of isolating ourselves even further from our community. The thing is, we get told how far our communities have come with our rights, but there's not really a big acknowledgement of how far we have yet to go. The anniversary of the first Spectrum meeting was on the day that Australia passed marriage equality. However, it was a stark reminder to me and my community that if you're disabled and get married, you risk becoming financially dependent on your spouse because your pension can and does get taken away.
Why do you think advocating at the intersections is important?
I think it's important for us to advocate intersectionally because our lives intersect with the systems that we are engaged with. Our identities are not stacked by importance. They are all encompassing and influence all areas of our lives. I think that by advocating our whole of system change, we can improve the outcomes for multiple disadvantaged people and communities. An example of this is in accessing diagnosis for neurodivergent traits. It's one that has multiple barriers for different communities and people. There's still binary views of gender and sex. There's financial accessibility issues. Oftentimes private diagnoses cost thousands upon thousands of dollars. There's still cultural biases that exist within the models of the medical models, which is still from a westernized perspective. And location, if you are rural or regional, if you're incarcerated, if you're in a residential care facility, you still might not be able to access those type of things. I think we need to look at how all of these things interconnect with the system so that there are no barriers for people in accessing appropriate supports.
What needs to happen for systemic change to occur?
I think for systemic change to occur, we really need two things. We need individual empowerment, and not in a tokenistic way. Disadvantaged people need to be given opportunities to make changes for themselves, to improve their own lives and for the lives of others. We must ensure that in our quest for improvement, it is not at a cost to others. Sometimes when we look at social justice movements, we look at what is best for the majority, what can be done now, or the low-hanging fruit, which is only really beneficial when we're sure that no one is left behind or thrown under the bus with this attitude.
What does best practice look like to you?
I think the best practice for systemic advocacy looks like meaningful engagement with LGBTIQA+ disabled people, reducing barriers to access to inclusion with organisations, on committees, boards, and as employees. This is more than just in a tokenistic way, like hiring a disabled or queer person to say, look, we have diversity, without allowing them access to actual career paths. Additionally, allowing disabled queer people the opportunity to advocate for themselves. We don't need saviours. We don't need white knights. We need the opportunity to empower ourselves.